So for people who want to make money on cars, what are you seeing these days for investment grade vehicles?
I think the only way right now to truly make money on a lot of these cars is to hold. I think that the days of flipping a year later is not realistic. I think there are cars that are investment grade that are going to go up that seem cheap now. 550 Maranello, which we were talking about before, that's one of them. Any gated manual transmission Ferraris, not any, but some gated manual transmission Ferraris. Lambos, like I said before, I really think have a long ways to go. But I also think nothing's going to happen soon. And I still have trouble believing that cars will be a good investment relative to other stuff. I told you that owning a Ford GT is like owning bonds. I feel that way.
Yeah.
The GT continues to go up a little. It never goes down. It's pretty reliable to own. But like you compare it against the S&P's up 60% in the last 2 years, this GT ain't doing that. And even if it was, you got to service it. You got to pay insurance. You just store it somewhere. So there are ways to make money in these cars. Now, I will say I have all the service history for my Carrera GT, and I looked it up. This from the second owner until when I bought it. If he had held it that long, it did beat the S&P, including all maintenance, all repairs, and even if you added in fuel and insurance.
What was the original MSRP of that car?
$440. And they're now average now amount of $1.3 million, $1.5 million, something like that.
Yeah.
But it's hard to know.
Yeah.
It's hard to know.
But that's also buying kind of at the peak of the S&P before the Great Recession where it went down. Yeah. And then the car outpaced right afterwards. So there's like a few variables.
I think the second owner of that car bought it in 2009. So some of that decline, I don't think the first owner would have beaten the S&P. Well, maybe because of the decline after that. But the point remains, like there are the possibilities exist, but like they exist in hindsight. It's just like buying NVIDIA. Like they primarily exist in hindsight, right? Like who knew that car would take off and some of the other ones wouldn't? Remember, that car when it came out was priced the same as the McLaren SLR and the Ferrari Enzo. Well, the Enzos took off too. SLRs are cheaper than they were in 2005. And how would you know? It's difficult to know what was going to happen.
Why has the SLR not gone up in value?
They made a ton of them. They're automatic transmissions, and they have some drawbacks. For example, the brakes, to replace brakes, it's $10,000 a corner. So 4 brakes is $40,000. Now, on a Carrera GT that costs $1 million, you can kind of justify that. It's harder on a car that costs $250 and that there's 3,500 of. That's kind of the problem with that. Plus, it's automatic. I mean, people don't want automatics. And, on an investment collectible car, the manual transmission has turned out to be one of the big distinguishing points.
So what cars today do you think would make a good bond strategy?
I still think Ford GT. I think those Ford GTs are going to continue to rise. They're still cool. People still seem to be interested in them. I think that one of the things that makes that car particularly appealing as a bond strategy is that it's not expensive to own.
Yeah.
That's not true of almost every other car that will probably increase in value. Countach will probably outperform the Ford GT, but it ain't cheap.
Yeah, I did a full service on my car, and I think it came to about $1,000 from the Ford dealership, and they replaced the struts in that hold up the engine bay in the back.
The Carrera GT is in service right now. It's with $20,000 for like a pretty minor service. Like those cars at that level are expensive, and that's the problem. So some of those cars I think will gain in value, but the thing that makes the Ford GT so desirable in that world is just how affordable it is to own, while it's also slightly climbing in value.
What I find interesting, and this is something that you should get into, Jack, is these no stripe Ford GTs. These cars used to be the least desirable because everyone wanted the stripe on the car, and so few people ordered the car without stripes.
Yep.
And now the without stripes cars are so rare that they're selling beyond what like the Heritage model is selling.
Why do you think I should get it? Why would you
should have gotten into it 10 years ago?
Yeah, like just. Well, do you want the market to plummet or something? Is that you want to buy one in about 2 years?
The no stripe. And the whole
is that what your plan is?
I have been surprised. The thing about the Ford GT that's interesting, especially, is that the cars are all the same. And so the distinguishing factor is a few little things that wouldn't matter to 98% of people. Sure. People are astonished when I tell them blue ones are worth a lot more than white ones. What do you mean? They're the same. Well, they made a lot less blue ones, and the market for some reason values that weird thing. I actually prefer white. And I've decided that I don't really like Heritage. I think Heritage is kind of ugly.
Really?
You drive around and it looks like a race car. It's got all these orange things. It'll be weird. You drive that thing, people be like, that guy's weird.
I think it's cool.
But
it's over the top.
Driving that around. People be like,
the average person, it doesn't look as cool as like the other supercars.
Yeah.
To the average person.
But and then there's that component of it too. People think it's a Ford. People ask me if it's a Mustang. I don't know if you get that. It's like, well, kinda. I don't want to have it depends how much I want to talk to them in that moment.
Yeah,
sure. But nonetheless, the cars are generally desirable. You know, a blue one with my miles sold recently for like $350,000, which I have 43,000 miles on my car. I was absolutely stunned.
And what did you buy yours for?
$225 in 18. And I've put 13,000 miles on it. So I drove it a lot. I drove to Palm Springs last week and back. And, you know, it hasn't cost much to own.
But before we get into that, let's be real here. Being an adult has its high points. You can eat ice cream for dinner. You can play video games whenever you want. You can even eat ice cream while you're playing video games. But in actuality, it's not all fun. You have to do your taxes, figure out what's for dinner every night, and of course, worst of all, schedule doctor's appointments. But at least for that one, there is our sponsor ZocDoc that makes adulting that much easier.
For those unaware, ZocDoc is a free app and website where you could search and compare high-quality, in-network doctors, choose the one that's the right fit for your needs, and then click to instantly book an appointment.
We're talking about in-network appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers across every specialty from mental health to dental health, eye care to skincare, and so much more.
You could filter for doctors who take your health insurance, are located nearby, are a good fit for any medical needs you might have, and who are highly rated by verified patients. You could also see their actual appointment openings, choose the right time for you, and then click to instantly book a visit. Plus, ZocDoc appointments happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. You could even score same-day appointments.
Seriously, guys, I recommend you try out ZocDoc. It really does make the process of booking appointments that much easier. In fact, I know a lot of people, they get injured or they get sick and they don't even schedule appointments because they think it's more effort than what it's worth. But not with ZocDoc, they really do make it that easy.
So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/iced to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today.
That is ZocDoc.com/iced, ZocDoc.com/iced.
Thank you, ZocDoc, for sponsoring this episode, and now let's get back to the podcast.